Hey guys, Enigmatic Mr. L here. So I recently made a video where I talked about my least favorite characters, or like most hated characters from each Fire Emblem game. So to complement that video, I decided to go with the opposite, my favorite Fire Emblem character from each game. So like last time, this will be taking in a variety of factors, how good a unit is, or sometimes how bad they are, or like the personality, can factor any sorts of things. Unlike last video, I am including the first three games, even though they all have remakes. So with that out of the way, let's just get on with the list, starting with the very first game, Shadow Dragon, the Blade of Light. I went with Marth. I don't think Shadow Dragon Blade of Light is the best design game. It makes sense. It's the first game in the series. They were still finding their footing. But Marth helps make the game a lot more bearable. Stat caps are 20 in this game, aside from HP. And stat boosting items, instead of just granting them 2, they grant like 5. So Marth, I don't know if he's necessarily the best candidate, but he's a pretty good candidate for receiving the stat boosters. Get cap stats or close to cap stats and everything. And then, well, minigames, you just like warp boss killer, warp your lord, like kill boss and seize the lord. Here you can just do two for one. Just warp Marth, have him kill the boss, and seize as well. He does have his problems, but despite the fact that he doesn't really have a mount, he still has 7 move, which is pretty good for like an infantry unit. He doesn't have reliable like 1-2 range or any promotion, but again, the stat caps being 20 helps out a lot. And even if you're playing maps like casually, you're not just like warping Marth and killing with him. His aggro utility, the fact that if an enemy can attack Marth, they will just draw, aggro away from like your healers and the like. That's really fun. So, plus just the no pants look. It's not as iconic as his more modern look, but it's still funny. For Gaiden, I went with Saber. This is the first Myrmidon character in this list, and he will not be the last. I really just like the Myrmidon class in general. Just something about pretty much always hitting your attacks and like almost always doubling is really satisfying. Even though most of the time, not always, but most of the time their high speed and skills kind of just overkill. I just like Myrmidons in general. But Saber specifically, an alms route, I don't think you get one by default. You can make the villagers one. I did do that in my playthrough. But Saber, he's the first one who joins in Celica's route, and he's probably going to be with you for a while. I did pick up Dean as well, but so I really could go Saber or Dean, but not really much to say here. Gaiden, I think, is even worse than FE1, but that's just me. Mystery of the Emblem, this is the main reason why I include the first 3 games and not just went with the remakes. So my first playthrough of Mystery of the Emblem Book 1, I decided to just blind Iron Man it. And Ogma is basically my MVP, just getting like insane level ups. One of the few characters who both contributed and survived to the very end. Was doing pretty well, just lost a few deaths here and there, like single digits crits. Navarre, in one map, he died on turn 1 enemy phase to a 2% crit. So rest in peace, Navarre. But fortunately, Ogma was able to help pick up the slack from Navarre's death. He really was basically the MVP of my FE3 Book 1 Iron Man run. So there's that. I don't remember when I did Book 2, I did not Iron Man it, and I took a break between Book 1 and 2, but I'm pretty sure I used him in my team at least, and he's probably good. Could also see Sirius as well if I didn't count Book 1. If I was just looking at Book 2, just because this character that was introduced in the first Fire Emblem game comes back, now you get to control insane base stats, pretty much just blows air and out of the water. That was really fun, but I went with Ogma. Next, for Genealogy of the Holy War, I went with Ira. So Ira just clears out the arena, no problem. She's this like sexy sword lady, and her like sword glows whenever she uses Astra. And none of those things really make a unit good, but I do think she's fun to use. Like, I first played through the game, and after a while I just kind of benched Alec and Noish, the Christmas Cavaliers, because they were kind of underperforming. Second playthrough, I decided to mix it up. I didn't use Ira, at least not as much, and used the Christmas Cavaliers, and I realized, hey, even though their stats aren't as good, just giving them rings, giving them like the Brave Sword or something, their mediocre combat stats are easier to fix up than like poor mobility. And I do think, the Christmas Cavaliers are better because of that, but I also think that Ira is more fun to use, despite you're going to have to take things slower with her because you can't catch up with like the mounted units. And the fact, even when she does catch up to the combat, her defense leaves a lot to be desired. But still, just there's something intrinsically satisfying. Like the first playthrough, I think many players just keep the Brave Sword on Ira because it feels like it's special to her. That's her connection. And just using that on her, even though pretty much anyone with like, I think it's like B rank sword can use it. I mean, Ira, if you don't mind slowing things down, it's a fine enough user of it. Really just a character I have a lot of fun using, even if she is outclassed. Could have also put her child characters here, like Ulster, I think it is, and Larcey, but in the end, I went with Ira. Now, for Thracia 776, we have probably my favorite unit in the entire series is Marty. Just in a nutshell, Marty is a bad unit in a game where it's easy to make bad units like viable. Again, we have non-HP stats capped at 20. You have the fatigue mechanics. You're not just, snowballing through a team with like a few units and just leaving everyone else behind. You have all these like Crusader scrolls that boost growth rates. So Marty, he doesn't just have low speed and skill. He has base 0 speed and skill in both, and resistance as well. So that's pretty funny. It's not just like low number like two. It's just outright 0. And his growth isn't much better. Even his strength isn't that good. He's got like 9 base strength. That's good. But then his strength growth is only like 15%. I think the really funny thing about Marty is like terrible speed, 0 base speed. Like I think it's like 10% base growth in speed. But he's got like a huge constitution stat and a whopping like 75% growth rate in it, which is just hilarious. Both my playthroughs of Thracia 776, I used a lot of Marty. In my first playthrough, he was the only character to get a perfect level up. I basically just stacked him with a bunch of scrolls and had him defend like a choke point, and he got a perfect level up that way. It was great. And then my next playthrough, I didn't do elite mode like I did the first playthrough, but the one elite scroll I got, I was like, do I want to give this to Marita? Probably the smarter choice. I want to train her, use her this time. But no, in the end, I gave it to Marty. Just it's also a thing where a non-mounted unit having really high build, there's some niche situations you can do with that, like rescuing dropping the green armor knights if you're trying to recruit Xavier. It's not enough to really make him good, but it's at least something. Just overall, he's bad, but it's easy to make him work, and that's what I find like so fun and endearing about him. Next up, we have Binding Blade. We have Rutger, the opposite of my previous entry, bad unit. Rutger, I think, is the best unit in the Binding Blade. I know he's got some competition from like Percival, Marcus, Milady, like your dancer, but most of the time, like the Myrmidon's focus and speed and skill is overkill. Not so in Binding Blade. Both of those stats are in like high demand. So just for like Rutger's like boss killing utility alone makes him like a top tier unit. And just beyond that, just boss killing, just really good at combat in general. He has a really slow support with Clarine, but if you manage to get them to A support, both of their affinities grant crit avoid, crit, and just regular avoid. You can make both of them like nearly untouchable and just give them like a really huge amount of crit. It's insane. Stack that with the Swordmaster's innate 30 plus crit, give them like a killing edge or a voodoo. And it's just insane. I love it. Pretty much use them in every playthrough. Like the first hero crest you're getting in that game, like chapter 7, it's like it's going to Rutger, no competition. And the second one has faced fierce competition, but Rutger's just a staple of any like Binding Blade playthrough I do. Finally, all my liking of Myrmidon's played off is like peak Myrmidon action. Next, we have Blazing Blade, where I went with Pent. I think the first time I played Blazing Blade, I didn't end up using Pent, but I just kind of stuck with Urk because it was fine. Experience is plentiful. The enemies are weak enough. It's fine. But on every subsequent playthrough, I always find a way to slot. I always find room to slot Pent onto my team one way or another. He makes a really great first impression. You find him as an NPC in a desert, and you just think, oh, he's going to die to everything, be stupid, and he just completely kills everything. It's insane. And eventually, like, wait, I want some of that EXP. My first playthrough, I rescued him with Florina just so he'd stop killing everything. And I realized, wow, this NPC is actually competent. And like, well, I think like Hector actually jokes about after you quote unquote save him, he says, maybe we don't need our help after all. And it's like, no, tones break. But then just when you get him as a unit, I A rank in like magic, A rate in stabs, great user of like warp, silence, that sort of thing, physic. He's got it all. He comes late joining, doesn't have like the high mobility for mounted units, but still just hitting on enemy resistance, staff utility. It's amazing. And then once you start going to like subsequent playthroughs and realize just how hard the like, Genesis chapter is, like I think when I did my first Hector hard mode playthrough, after struggling with Eliwood hard mode, I was like, nope, I'm not going there. I'm just letting Pent solo everything, so I don't need to go there. So, yeah, great unit. Sacred Stones, I went with Seth, just like with Rutger. This is another case of just my favorite unit's the best unit. Although in like Binding Blade, there's about 3 to 5 other characters make that case for. Here's just Seth, just hands down. Like most Jagans, he starts promoted class, solid base stats, but unlike many Jagans, he never really falls off. His growths are great. His base stats are just incredible. He's the only character. He's a character that has the best availability. Like even Erica, if you go Ephraim route, she leaves her a bit, but not Seth. Pretty much the only character in it. Pretty much the only chapter he's not in is 5X. But A rank and lances and swords, you can choose which one you want to S rank, get that +5 hit and crit, which legendary weapon you want to use. Like even though in Sacred Stones they nerf paladins can't use axe, Seth just doesn't care. He'll just wreck everything. If he would crush an enemy with his bare hands if the game would let him. In a lot of my playthroughs of Sacred Stones, just half my army, or I'll split my army in two, with like 9 out of 10 or like 11 out of 12 units being on one side, just Seth being on the other side, and Seth is still handling it better than like all my other scrubs. Like so good. You could argue that he makes the game less fun because you don't have to think as much. You just send Seth in. And, that's true to an extent. I've done challenge runs before where I didn't use Seth. But overall, he's just too fun to not use, at least, here and there. Then we have Path of Radiance. I went with Marcia. You're a fairly early game joining like Pegasus. Not super early, joins like chapter 9, I think. And she does need some like investment to get off the ground, but just flying utility. And then you get that one held item that negates the flyer's like weakness to bows. And she can just do a lot of work. I think in like efficiency settings, Marcia ends up like surpassing Titania of all characters. I still think Titania is better overall. Titania is like an unstoppable force in the first half and still really good in the second half. Marcia is either non-existent in the first push or like needs a lot of investment and then is an unstoppable force in the second half. But overall, I think just Titania contributes more overall. But even still, one with Marcia is just my favorite because unlike Sacred Stones, Path of Radiance is longer. It basically, right as you in like chapter 17, that multi-part chapter, it's not that Titania is falling off, just your other units are like catching up. It's just like it goes on longer than Sacred Stones. But both of those units are great. I just had to pick one, just kind of for more variety of reasons. That's two really super powerful Jagan units. I just went with Marcia here. Next, we have Radiant Dawn. I went with the Black Knight. Even though he's only playable in like 2.5 chapters, like the one chapter in part 3, if you clear it fast enough, he doesn't show up at all. But I don't really LTC or anything, and I'm just happy to see him in that chapter. Just getting a unit that's completely invincible after a main antagonist the last game, even if anyone joins you briefly, it's just something really epic about it. Like Eclipse is on him is the most like overkill skill at that point in the game because he's just going to annihilate anything so much as looks at anyway. Completely invincible. I believe it's like his Ashura's blessing. The armor has worn off at this point. He states in like his conversation against Ike in part 3. But he takes such minimal damage, if at all, that even if he does take in, he's got like renewal, just instantly heal it back up. Helps out in like the Fog of War chapter, even though that level's just kind of like a glorified cutscene. But using him there is cool. Using him at the finale of part 1, even though using other units to still want to train him, just having a character that's like, okay, just send him to annihilate anything. That's fun. And then I really hate that like Fog of War Lagoose chapter when you go back to the Dawn Brigade. So even if he comes late in that chapter, having someone you can just hold on for a few turns, like get the Black Knight, helping out a lot there is really cool. Also, he just has his own battle theme whenever you use him, so that's neat as well. Shadow Dragon, I went with Sheeta. it's mostly just because she has the wing spear that's effective against like so many bosses. Shadow Dragon was the second Fire Emblem game I ever played, the first one being Awakening. And I think I remember reading somewhere that Cordelia is based off like a blue-haired Pegasus Knight that was in love with the main lord, but he ends up with someone else. And that's referring to Katria, but I saw Sheeta and thought it was going to be her. Like, I thought at the end, like, they weren't going to get together. And so I don't care if Martha's like, I love you, just based on how much work you're doing for me. I don't think her low strength growth was a problem my first playthrough. She seemed to be getting strength just fine. But really great units. And then just seeing like her supports in later games like Marth and Sheeta, that helps as well. New Mystery of the Emblem, we have Pala, joins early, can do a lot of work, even like 0% growth. I've seen some like online plays of that, like Don 151. Interesting to see her there. It was useful in my just regular hard mode playthrough. Not much to say about her. I don't have too much experience with New Mystery of the Emblem, but she's probably my favorite unit in that game. For Awakening, I went with 2. Some of y'all might call me out on this for cheating, but it's my list, my rules. Awakening was the Fire Emblem game that just kind of introduced what I would say like more modern Fire Emblem, where every unit can be good. There's no more good units, bad units. It's just everyone's good. Some are still better than others, obviously, but there's no like completely joke, terrible units. And so these 2 are on here, not necessarily because of their combat utility. It's mostly just because of their personalities. Now, combat does help, like Henry being a natural dark mage to Nosferatu tank. We all know how overpowered that is in Awakening. Lonku, again, I just love the early game Myrmidon join units. But just Myrmidons in general. Lonku just consistently hitting, consistently doubling if he has subpar defense. Those are both nice, but mostly just their supports I just find hilarious, and their characters, just Henry, this completely, like, unchecked, like, insane sociopath, but he always has a smile on, just like the game describes him as heroinely optimistic. I'm like, yeah, couldn't have done a better job describing him myself. And then Lonku, he has some, like, hardcore supports with, like, the male avatar, male Robin, and, like, Gregor. He has, like, this hero side of him, but also just the supports with, like, any female character are obviously really funny. Like, even Muriel, character find me boring. I don't think it's Lonku's best support, but it's one of the few Muriel supports I find to be, like, entertaining. And I think Lonku ex Churche, don't know how you pronounce it, the one who has, like, Minerva, I think that's the best support in the whole game. Next, I have Fates. I went with Laszlo. Inigo in Awakening was also one of my favorite kids. Pretty much the only one I'm consistently where I would oftentimes my playthroughs bother up to like grind up and raise him up to be on par with the rest of my team. So I was excited when I found out Laszlo was actually Inigo in Fates. And again, this is modern Fire Emblem, so in terms of combat, he's whatever. Anyone can be good. A lot of favoritism investment, he's fine. But I do like his subtle changes from Awakening to Fates. So I've heard one person say he's the exact same, which is almost true, but you see his supports like with his daughter Soleil comes to realize just how much his mother Olivia and whoever his father is, they cared about him in the same way he cares about his daughter. And he just comes to realize, you never know when you're going to like part, because he's going to have to eventually go back to his home world. So he has these connections with like Xander and Perry, etc. But he knows he'll have to leave them one day. I felt it was just a nice small touch, like evolution to his character. A lot of times I play as the female core, and he ends up being my the one I support with, if it's not Jacob or Kaze. So, yeah, just really was glad to see Inigo again. For Echoes, Shadows of Valentia, I went with Zeke. This just goes to show how much like voice acting can influence things. The first Fire Emblem game with like full voice acting, just Zeke's voice. I don't know who the voice actor is, but he did a great job. Just that deep, booming, commanding voice. And just the fact that even though he joins late, once you get him, he's this really strong force. Like Matilda, your other cavalry units, Matilda and Clive. Yeah, they're not going to be competing with Zeke here. Let's just have the character moment after seeing him like presumably dead in the first Fire Emblem game, have him like survive. That was cool. I along with people played Echoes. Shadows of Linta before Gaiden, so it was like cool to see him again. And I played it before New Mystery of the Emblem. So seeing him again and realizing he was a Camus from Shadow Dragon was cool. And just once you get to like I got to like the post end game where I bought the DLC, so you got those like 10 overclass units. And I was like, okay, I want kind of one of each one. So who's the cavalry I'm going to use? Well, it wasn't Matilda, it wasn't Clive. Even when I got the DLC Randall, so no, I still want to use Zeke, as well as getting like the other overclass class options. Just overall solid unit, really great unit and solid character as well. For 3 houses, I went with Dimitri. Now, obviously, again, Modern Fire, anyone can be good, but Dimitri, as well as just Violet and House Lords in general, are like insanely strong. Just insanely strong growths and class options, like that sort of thing. Just Dimitri's strength stat, like we play Blue Lions on Maddening. He's your you play on Maddening in particular. He's one of your very few characters who can like survive and tank hits in the early game. One of your most like reliable boss killers. A very good candidate for like stat boosters like speed and strength, allowed them to meet like doubling thresholds on bosses and enough strength to KO them. And of course, everyone knows how like broken Battalion Rat / Battalion Vantage is. But, you know, beyond that, there's also just his personality. Some people have pointed out that, you know, previous Fire Emblem Lords, they're not bad. They just kind of blend together. Like, someone was describing, like, an interest. Look at this, what the Fire Emblem Wiki says about Marth. And it's describing it. So, wait, that's not Marth. That's Roy. They're so similar. You didn't even notice. When he starts reading another one, so wait, that's not Marth either. That's Erica from Sacred Stones. But Dimitri kind of has that. The strong, noble man wants to, like, care for others, help his friends, but he's got, like, this darker edge to him and, like, this chip on his shoulder. And, I remember when I saw the trailer for 3 Houses showing the time skip and what like a broken man has become. It was at that moment, if there was any doubt before, I was definitely locking into Blue Lions as my first route. Because if nothing else, I wanted to be there for Dimitri and save him. And just going through that route, seeing him like resist his like inner demons, then like fall to them, succumb to them, then eventually like overcoming them. Like his story arc is just beautiful. Love him as a unit, especially love him as a character. One of my favorite characters in the entire series. And last but not least, we have Engage. I chose Anna. Just in a game with like very, I would say, overkill fan service, where it's like, hey, look at this character from previous game. Hey, look at this map we used from previous game. Hey, look at this music track from previous game. Hey, it's all these things you like. I think Anna is an example of fan service done well, because she's a fresh take on an old, familiar character. Like, we've had playable Anna before, starting in Awakening. They had DLC and Fates. But this is the first time that we have a Warcrime Anna, who's like 10 or 11 years old. And you look at her stats, and they're like, base stats, they're terrible, but that also makes it like a fun training project. I got the DLC, so all those stat boosters, I got to just dump them onto Anna in like my first 3 or 4 playthroughs. So, my first playthrough, I just reclassed her into an Armor Knight, just because I thought it'd be funny, this small girl and like this heavy armor. Subsequent playthroughs, I've gone Mage Knight, I've gone Sage, and I've just kept her in like her baseline class and went with a Warrior, just give her a magic bow. They all have their own strengths and drawbacks. I don't think Anna is a particularly good unit overall in terms of like efficiency, because she does require a lot of babying to like catch up to par with her other units. But she is really fun to use. I've read like 0 to hero training arc going on with her. And again, just the fact that we've seen Anna before in almost every Fire Emblem game, but we've never seen a kid Anna. And ignoring the fact that deploying her as a Warcrime, she's fun to use. All right, that is my list. As always, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to let me know what some of your favorite Fire Emblem characters are in the comments below. And I will see you guys next time. This is Enigmatic Mr. L, signing out.